Well, friends, again, Shabbat Shalom to all of you. We wanted to share a message about the Torah. Of course, there's something that I think really resonates for me this particular day, but we also have this unveiling that is going to be happening, this unveiling of a donor recognition sculpture. And it's really special. And you'd wonder, well, why are we doing that on Shabbat? What is the connection here? What would be the part of all of this? Well, I think that it's a big deal, not just for our synagogue, but because of what it means. It means much more than we raised a little bit of money. That's part of what it's about, but it's not really its essence. It's so much more. Yes, we talk about donor recognition, and it's a recognition of our supporters and our sustainers. All of that is true, but it's so much more than that. It's a recognition that these supporters and sustainers contribute to our vision. They build a future, and they shape our present right now. You do that. In this week's Torah portion, it's called Vayera, and we see that Abraham is sitting at the edge of his tent. It's immediately following his own circumcision. He circumcises himself, and as much as Abraham is a model for us, I don't recommend every one of his actions. But the Torah says very clearly to us, Adonai appeared to Abraham by the terebinths of Mamre. He was sitting at the entrance of the tent as the day grew hot. Looking up, he saw 3 men standing near him, and as soon as he saw them, he ran from the entrance of the tent to go ahead and greet them. He bowed down to the ground and he said, "Friends, if it's all right with you, do not go and rush ahead and pass by me. Let me bring you some water. Bathe your feet and rest under the tree. Let me get you something to eat so that you may refresh yourselves. And then go on seeing that you have come this way." And then they replied, "Go ahead," which is ancient words for "we appreciate that, thank you." And Abraham, it says in the Torah, hastened into the tent, and he goes to Sarah and said, "Quick, go grab 3 seahs." A seah is just a measurement. "Go grab 3 seahs of our best flour, knead it and bake some bread." Then Abraham ran to the herd. He took a calf, tender and choice, a good one, of course, and he gave it to a servant who rushed to go ahead and prepare it. He took cheese and milk and the calf that had been prepared, and he made these 3 men cheeseburgers. And he set, which to me is so gross, but okay, and set these before them, and he waited on them, these 3 visitors, these whom our rabbis say are angels, but Abraham doesn't realize that. He gave them to them under the tree as they ate. And then a little bit later in the text it says, the visitors set out from there, they went down toward Sodom, and Abraham was walking with them to see them off. That's the beginning of the text. And it's kind of a nice story. We see something really positive about Abraham and of Sarah. But our commentators again say that these weren't just ordinary strangers, they were angels. But we're not really focusing on that because Abe didn't necessarily know. He didn't know who they were. This guy was sitting at the edge of the tent in the heat of the day under some, I would suspect, considerable pain. And he's looking for people to help. The welcoming that Abraham and Sarah provided these strangers should be our model. Should be our model for what it takes to make people feel welcome in our community. What Abraham and Sarah do is to model how we engage in hachnasat orchim, often referred to as either welcoming guests or hospitality. But in the ancient world, it was a rough terrain. It wasn't so easy. And there was no 7-Eleven to make a stop if you're, kind of running out of food in your car. Things were difficult, and people were far more vulnerable than most of us can even imagine. So hospitality wasn't just kindness. It helped people to survive. It was more than bringing them into your house and giving them a cookie. It was sustaining them on their journeys. Abraham is eager to go out and find someone to welcome. Imagine such a thing. Eager to go out and find someone to welcome and bring them in. Sarah is prepared to drop everything that she was doing and nourish strangers in her home. The rabbis say that their tent is open on all four sides so that they can see somebody who might be in that vulnerable position and bring them close, bring them in, bring them to them, and provide some comfort and some sustenance. Sarah and Abraham don't need to be asked. And they didn't resist a call. They made a big tent, and they were committed to having people in it. And when Abraham saw that these folks were satisfied and safe, he also walked them out, not just to the door, but put them on the right path, put them in the right direction. He walked with them, still probably in considerable pain, I must add, just to make sure that they found their way. That's Sarah and Abraham's tent. I like that our sanctuary resembles a tent. I find this to be kind of important. I like that when there's light outside, we can see that middle section in front of me and behind me that you're facing, that stained glass. People always say, Rabbi, what is that about anyway? What does it mean? Because most of the time we hear it's dark. It says, Mi ergor b'ho alecha, mi yishkon v'har kodshecha, who may sojourn in your tent, who may dwell on your holy mountain. Now, I'm sure our folks who helped design the sanctuary, I don't know this, I didn't ask Rabbi Bronstein, but there's kind of a mountain theme around here, in case you haven't noticed. There's a lot of things that people talk about mountains, so who may dwell on your holy mountain, but I actually think they picked the psalm because it says in the beginning, who may sojourn in your tent, and look at this structure. We need to make sure, even with our walls and doors, that it's going to be open, that people can enter, because you belong here. Whomever you are, our congregants, folks who are guests, visiting from out of town, perhaps visiting from the night, perhaps you're Jews, perhaps you're not, doesn't really matter, because if you want to come and have a spot here, you belong here. We open our tent just so that you can enter, and also so that we can welcome you. Abraham and Sarah brought nourishment, sustenance, and comfort to 3 men that they didn't know, and we can bring nourishment, sustenance, and comfort as well, because that's what you do in your tent. I get that we might have picked the psalm because of the mountains, but really, it's really about the tent. So much so that we've made a vision statement recently. Our folks worked really hard, volunteers in this room, staff, coming together, leadership folks. And one of the things among 7 different things that we've identified, one of those messages, it says that we strive to have an open tent. That was our goal. And underneath that heading, it says, a warm greeting, open arms, no judgment. We welcome diversity of ability, background, color, gender expression, age, sexual orientation, religious practice, and political belief. We celebrate the strength and support the need in everyone. That's what we're trying to do here. That's part of our vision. Now, I don't think we're totally there yet. We have work to do. That's why it's a vision. We're still working on it. But it gets sweeter and sweeter and sweeter all the time. We are trying to be that vision and that tent. And we express this in our vision because we learn another message from the Talmud, from this great tradition of text for us. Rabbi Yehuda says, in the name of Rav, another great teacher, he learns from the Genesis text that welcoming guests is greater than receiving the divine presence. Welcoming guests is more important than your own personal encounter with God. A later text from another medieval commentator, his name is Maral, that's what he's known by, he draws on the idea that all human beings are created in the image of God, and with that he says, when you welcome a guest, it is tantamount to honoring God. So when I look at those 2 little teachings out of this huge, huge message of tradition, There's a clear meaning that we get to receive, and the meaning is spirituality is great and cool and wonderful. Developing our relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One of blessing, God, the Holy One, whatever you want to say, developing that relationship is significant, and it's important and hopefully inspiring. But more important is to honor your fellow human being, to love your neighbor. So our actions, according to this view, our actions are more compelling than our beliefs. Isn't that interesting? I love that about Judaism. How we treat the stranger and the one who needs a tent is the greatest measure of our values. Our behavior toward others should reflect the spirituality of welcoming that Sarah and Abraham modeled for us. So what does it have to do with this donor recognition sculpture business? Glad you asked. Without our leaders, without our sustainers, our supporters, our friends, our volunteers, our stewards, we can't do our work. We can't create a safe tent for people to have a homecoming, to feel like they belong, that there's something that can inspire them, so we can leave the tent and go on our journey again. Your ongoing covenantal, generous support at all levels, whether it's the $100 a year or more, all of it helps us be who we are, to make sure that we can bring a minion to you when you need it, if you're in a time of mourning, help to organize people to lobby and protest when we see injustice in the world and broken fragments in our world. It helps us to come together around somebody's bed at the end of life. It helps us to raise up another generation of students as they become B'nai Mitzvah and read from a Torah scroll for the very first time. We are with each other when we're on the peaks on mountains and in the valley of shadows. And we teach Torah to people of all ages so that we can see ourselves in this ancient text, our inheritance, and learn a bit more about how we're supposed to walk in the world. From our vision, we are that caring community, a spiritual center, a place to grow, a voice for justice, an open tent, a gathering place, and a part of a people. And your support, your generosity, helps us to build that place of love, helps us to build that place of kindness, that place of comfort and holiness and nourishment and sustenance. And then we bring it out to the world like a light. That's what we're doing here. That's what we're trying to do. We miss. We're human. I get it. But that's what we're trying to do. So it's also important to say thank you, because you don't have to do this. Those days are over. My parents gave to the organizations that never once stepped foot into. That doesn't really happen anymore. And I'm fine with that. I'm not saying it was better yesteryear. I'm saying we have to make a synagogue that's compelling now. That's compelling now. Because if not, we should think about what we're doing. What's compelling and meaningful? So we'll have a couple of brief words a little bit later. We have a few thank yous to some of our friends. We're going to share a little bit of another melody as we go out and reveal this sculpture, this donor appreciation sculpture. But more than that, I want to express gratitude that we have people here that care, and they show that they care with expressions of gratitude and with expressions of remembering loved ones, that they're willing to support and sustain this place so we can provide that sustenance, nourishment, and comfort, so that people who come into our tent can be heard and seen and known. Let's move to